The private terminal at Dallas Love Field buzzed with quiet luxury. Marble floors gleamed under soft golden lights, and attendants in crisp uniforms moved briskly, serving champagne to wealthy clients waiting for their flights. Among them was Danielle Carter, a 28-year-old African-American woman in a navy blue flight attendant uniform. She wasn't new to this world. She had spent 5 years working on private jets, catering to CEOs, celebrities, and political donors. She had seen arrogance, entitlement, even cruelty, but nothing prepared her for what was about to happen on this night. At the far end of the lounge stood Richard Grant, a billionaire CEO whose name was plastered across financial magazines, silver-haired, expensive suit, sharp eyes that scanned people the way a butcher sizes up meat. Danielle noticed the moment his gaze landed on her. His smirk was cold, dismissive, and something about it made her stomach knot. She didn't yet know that this flight would change her life forever. The Gulfstream jet gleamed under floodlights on the tarmac. Danielle boarded first, checking safety procedures, making sure the catering order matched the manifest. Everything was spotless. Then came Richard Grant, followed by his assistant. He didn't greet Danielle. Instead, he stopped in the narrow aisle, blocking her path. Richard, condescendingly, "So, you're the stewardess tonight? Figures." Danielle, calmly professional, "Yes, sir. My name is Danielle. If there's anything you need during the flight, please let me know." Richard chuckled, but it wasn't friendly. "Richard, I thought they'd send one of the usual girls. Blonde. Blue eyes. That's the standard, you know." The words hung in the air like poison. His assistant shifted uncomfortably, pretending to check his phone. Danielle kept her composure, but inside she burned. She had dealt with microaggressions before, but this man wasn't subtle. He was deliberate. The jet soared above the clouds. Danielle served drinks, laid out meals, and checked on passengers. Richard's assistant barely spoke. But Richard? He treated Danielle like an object. "Richard," snapping fingers, "water, no ice, and hurry up this time." When she returned with the glass, he glanced at it, then sneered. "Richard, of course. Figures you can't even get water right. You people never do." Danielle froze. She knew exactly what "you people" meant. Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Danielle, the water is exactly as you asked, sir." Richard, leaning back, smirking. "Don't get smart with me. You're here to serve, not talk." The assistant shot her a look, half apology, half warning. But he said nothing. Silence. Always silence. The humiliation wasn't just in the words. It was in the way Richard made sure she felt smaller with every command, like she didn't belong. Hours into the flight, Richard had been drinking heavily. His arrogance grew louder, his insults sharper. At one point, when Danielle bent to pick up a napkin from the floor, he muttered loud enough for her to hear, "Richard, that's about right, on your knees, where people like you belong." Danielle's heart pounded. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Never let them break you, baby. You are more than their hate." But when Richard grabbed her wrist as she tried to walk past, smiling as if he owned her, something inside Danielle snapped. Danielle, firm, pulling back, "Don't touch me." Richard, mocking, "Or what? You'll complain? Nobody cares. I could end your career with one phone call." The jet was silent except for the hum of engines. His assistant looked away, cowardly, and then Danielle did the unthinkable. She slapped him, a sharp, echoing crack that cut through the cabin. Richard's cheek reddened instantly, his smug expression twisting into shock and rage. For a long second, no one moved. The air itself seemed frozen. Danielle's breathing was heavy, her hand still tingled. Richard's assistant finally stammered. "Assistant, Mr. Grant, she didn't mean—" Richard, roaring, "She's done. She's finished." He lunged, as if to stand, but the turbulence jolted the cabin, forcing him back down. His face contorted with fury. "Richard, do you know who I am? Do you know what I can do to you? You'll never work again. Not in this industry, not in this country." Danielle stood tall, shaking but resolute. "Danielle, do what you want, but you will never speak to me or anyone like me that way again." The assistant stared, wide-eyed. Richard fumed, cursing under his breath. But Danielle didn't flinch. For the rest of the flight, Richard refused to look at her. But his threats hung heavy in the cabin. When the jet landed, Danielle was called into her supervisor's office the very next day. She expected termination. Instead, she found something unexpected. Her supervisor looked conflicted, but finally said, "Supervisor, we've had complaints from Mr. Grant. He wants you fired." Danielle braced herself. "Supervisor," lowering voice, "but we've also had statements. His own assistant wrote to us. He described everything. The insults, the harassment, what you endured." Danielle blinked in disbelief. The assistant, the man who stayed silent, had actually spoken up afterward. "Supervisor, we can't fire you, Danielle. Not after this. In fact, we're launching an internal review about how our staff are treated by clients." Richard Grant's empire might have been untouchable, but on this flight, his power slipped. Weeks later, a major news outlet ran an expose on Richard Grant, leaked testimony, former employees speaking out, allegations of racism, harassment, abuse of power. The headlines spread like wildfire. Stocks plummeted. Board members distanced themselves. Richard became a scandal instead of a success story. Danielle, meanwhile, was quietly promoted, not just for her years of service, but for her courage. One evening, as she prepared another jet for takeoff, she thought back to that slap. The sound still echoed in her memory, not as violence, but as defiance. It wasn't about ending Richard Grant. It was about refusing to let him define her worth. Racism doesn't always wear hoods or shout in the streets. Sometimes it hides in boardrooms and private jets, behind tailored suits and polished shoes. But dignity can be defended anywhere. Danielle's slap wasn't just against one man. It was against every voice that ever told her she was less. And in that cabin, above the clouds, she reminded the world of a simple truth. Respect isn't given by power. It's earned by humanity. And when humanity is denied, sometimes it takes just one act of courage to bring it crashing down.